Yep, we're good. All right, we're ready to roll. The streaming's working.
My mic isn't making any noise
I think it
here.
is. No, it's not. Amy?
Will you make sure
Well, you can use mine. I think they're. Amy? Mark Strong's mic is not working.
Interesting.
Gotcha.
You wouldn't say
There we go.
There you go. Okay, good evening, everybody who braved the cold weather to join us tonight. We'll go ahead and get started and call the study session to order. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, and I failed to mention the time. I always, for the record, like to mention the time that we begin. It was 6:05 p.m. Today is the 13th of December. All right, any changes to the agenda, Dr. Finch?
No changes.
Okay, communications?
No communications for the study session.
All right, we'll just jump right into the data summit.
All right, we have Data Summit where we review the data from fall, winter, and spring throughout the school year. And so this is the one where we review the fall data. In addition, we have data that we've looked at in the past for last spring's Smarter Balance. And then there is some additional, some new data that we've collected that we haven't had in the past. We have some data analysis of our summer school program. We also have data that was requested in the past by Mr. Mokel. We have the highly capable disaggregated data by school. We also have data that was requested by Mr. Jager. That's looking at the number of our graduates from the class of 2022 who continued on into the military service. So we were wanting to take a look at that, and we'll keep track of that over time. And also we'll be assisted by Assistant Superintendent Stacy Drake. She'll help us look at the fall data from iReady. iReady is the diagnostic assessment that we have all of our students in kindergarten through 8th grade take for reading and math. And so Stacy will help us with that. All right, so we'll begin. We have a data packet for the board. We have data, I believe, that they're working to get on the overhead for us, but we'll go ahead and get going on this while our communications director works on the overhead for us. So with the board, we'll take a look. The first data set is our WKIDS, the Washington Kindergarten Inventory of Developing Skills. That's looking at kindergarten readiness, and we have longitudinal data now from the fall of 2015 to the fall of 2021. And so if you take a look at that, we started back in fall of 2015 at 38% of students meeting standard. And then in the fall of 21, we had 57% meet standard. We actually had a high of 2019 of 61%. So we had a slight dip. And of course, we're going to see a slight dip due to the COVID pandemic. We'll be seeing a dip in the data kind of across the board. But, good to see that even with COVID, we're still much higher than when we initially started this assessment of kindergarten readiness. In gender, there is a difference. So in general, over time, you can see that our female students are coming in at a higher rate of kindergarten readiness than our male students. And then when we disaggregate by ethnicity, we see that the white students are coming in at a higher rate of kindergarten readiness than our Hispanic students. Again, with looking at the disaggregation of data, our Hispanic students are our largest minority population, so we'll see a disaggregation of data throughout our data sets with that. That was 2 or more races, so if there's an N of 10 or more students, then they report that data, but if there's less than 10, they don't report it. So that's why you see sometimes, some years it's reported and some years it's not because the N is too small. We turn the page, we'll take a look at the components of the WKIDS. So there are 6 components: cognitive, which is like problem solving; language, so that's oral language; literacy is more written language; math; physical readiness, and physical includes both fine motor and gross motor skills; and then social emotional. So that's, looking at, that's observational. So the teachers observe all throughout September and October and get a sense of the students' readiness when it comes to all these components. In general, we have seen over time that math is the lowest. So again, in the fall of 21, math was the lowest at 71% readiness, and the highest was physical, both the fine and gross motor skills together. It's at 90% of our students were ready for the standards there in the physical. Next page, we look at disaggregation of data. That was actually shared on the other page as well, but this kind of just calls out disaggregation looking at white and Hispanic students. So you can see that there's gaps in kindergarten readiness between our white and Hispanic students. And then the next page is looking at special education and non-special education. Again, this is actually a smaller N, so it might fluctuate a little more, but it is good to see that in fall of 21, it was a higher rate of readiness than we had in 2019. So, but there's still quite a gap. So students who are not special education, we had 59% kindergarten readiness, and special education students were at 33% kindergarten readiness. Kindergarten readiness really leads to our kindergarten scores in the spring. We want to try to have as many students come in kindergarten readiness in the fall, and then take them in the spring to look at their iReady assessment. So we had shared this previously with the board. This is spring scores of 2022. But again, just really excited that we have all of the schools over 80% of kindergarten students reading at grade level in the spring. And last year, Apple Valley was at 95%. In previous years, we've had schools at 100%. So we've had Mountain View and White Hollow and Cottonwood at 100%. And then Apple Valley was very close to 100% last spring. Again, just this is data that we've shared when we do that application for the recognition. And so that was part of why we are recognized as a lighthouse system for early learning, is the excellent achievement that we have both for kindergarten readiness and then for kindergarten students. Once they come in the door and they're ready, we can take them to the next level. All right, so any questions? That's our data set for kindergarten readiness. Any questions about that? Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, we have across, we just got our 20th partner for the PreK initiative. And so we have, a lot of our community partners have 1 or 2 classrooms, but I don't have the total number, but that's something that we could take a look at and kind of pull that. We have 20 partners, so each of them, we have 10 to 15 students in their class. So there's quite a large population of private preschool in our area, and we work with them. We don't want to necessarily be pulling kids from private preschools to come to public. We want to have them as partners, and we have visited those preschools and see that they're using the strategies that we've recommended, like for math. That's been a focus to try to improve those math scores, and they are using a 10 frame. So students are doing one-to-one correspondence and putting objects into the 10 frame. And then in our kindergarten classrooms, we use a 20 frame. So you have a nice alignment of instructional practice there.
Is that a common, I mean, the Valley, is it common for Yakima, Sunnyside, and those school districts?
I would have to say, unfortunately, that I don't see a lot of the work that we see in West Valley being replicated in other places. There are more districts are doing transition kindergarten, so that's good to see. But this outreach to the other community partners, we're not seeing that as much as perhaps we'd like to see. It really does position us to have opportunities when they arise. I think I've shared in the past that there's this work with collective impact in the Yakima Valley, and so Senator Patty Murray's office has recognized that. Her local director is Raquel Crawley, and so Raquel is very aware of the work that we're doing in early learning, and so she has been very supportive of our work. So we have a project with Mountain View to try to increase our services in the Mountain View attendance area, because it's one of the rural areas, and we partnered with the collective impact for rural areas of Yakima County. So this makes sense that Mountain View is part of that collective impact work. And so that's supported by some congressional directed spending that Patty Murray was able to get into the budget. So by having these partnerships, so On that project, we had Epic at the table because Epic has classrooms they're running out of Tannin Valley. Epic said yes, if we were able to get this partnership and support from the senator's office, that we would be able to expand services. So that's what we're working on for the future, is try to expand services in the Mountain View attendance area and have a preschool be able to serve in that area. But that's kind of a long-winded answer to say, by having these partnerships that we have, it creates good opportunities, and I'm kind of surprised other districts aren't doing that. All right, so we'll move on to the iReady reading and math. This is new data for us. This is the fall 2022, and this was data that was students completed as they came in for September. So this is new data for us. So Stacy's going to take us through this.
Okay, so we're looking at reading on that first page. So remember, what we want is students to enter the grade level in the green, which would be the darker green is mid on grade level or above or early on grade level. So you can see the district there on the right, and then that's Washington next to it, and then national. Those are all this year. And then the far left is the historical national norms. And remember, they're still using the fall of 1819 because it is pre-COVID. So you can see that as a district for reading, we're actually ahead of where we were, or where the nation was prior to COVID. So we're looking pretty good in reading, looking at the district as a whole, K-8. And then on the next page, still reading, is the breakdowns for each grade level. So the norm is that pre-COVID. Year to date is the national norm. And then from this fall, and then where we are as a district. You can see there in reading 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, we're looking pretty good. We're beating where we were, where the nation is, the national norm at grade level. And then the next page is 6, 7, 8. 6th grade is quite ahead of the national norm in West Valley. With 7th grade and 8th grade, just right there with the national norm. Then the next page is mathematics. How we entered as a district as a whole this fall, where our students are placing. So pre-COVID, we were about 27% in the green, is the national norm. And our district is at 24, which is still higher than Washington State and the rest of the nation from this fall. And then the next page is breakdown by grade level. You can see in 5th grade, we are ahead of the national pre-COVID norm and ahead of the rest of the nation. So that's looking great. We're ahead in 4th grade. About the same in the other grades. A little bit further ahead in 1st grade. And then the following page, mathematics, is 6, 7, 8. And we're a little behind where we were with 7th grade than the national norm pre-COVID. But 6th grade is looking pretty good, how they came in from 5th grade. And we're right about where the nation was pre-COVID in 8th grade. But we're ahead of the state. So that's where we are placing on our reading and math, K-8.
I found one thing interesting. The 3rd grade data on reading, they're achieving very well. That was the kindergarten class when we went in 2020, and they're achieving extremely high. Is there a reason? And it looks like it's across the country. Is there a reason why?
I will say that we're finding that COVID has really impacted the early learning population. You know, children who were 2, 3, 4 years old learning language, you know, especially those that were in full day childcare and only saw adults with masks on, so they didn't get to see their mouths moving. In addition to the stress of, you know, just the whole pandemic really caused an impact on social emotional skills and language skills for children. So that could be why the younger grades are not coming in as high, and why we're seeing our block kids data is showing a little dip. I think our teachers in West Valley worked really hard with those kids, you know, that didn't have a full kinder year. And then in first grade, we had kind of figured it out, even though we were remote part of it. So I think our students who were with us, our teachers worked really hard to get those students the skills they needed, the pre-literacy skills. I think we're gonna have to continue to work really hard for these K-1-2 students because they were really impacted by the shutdown and the mask wearing.
Then the next set of data is the schools and classroom. And really, we have this in here as baseline data. Maybe Stacy can share again the work that you've done with principals. And that's one of the things that I was so impressed with when you were principal at Cottonwood was your emphasis on growth. So that's the great thing about this iReady system is that it's able to calculate student growth. So we have meeting standard, but then also growth. Can you share a little bit about that? Your work with principals to really emphasize growth.
Is this on? Yes. Okay. This year, the elementary principals designed or created with their staff, they created school improvement plans focused on student growth. So they took the percentage of students last year who, at each grade level, who made 1 year's growth in 1 year's time. There's a diagnostic growth report in iReady, which depending on where the students enter, when we saw that page prior, we had students who enter in the green and the yellow and the red. So depending on where they enter, the iReady assigns a score that's normed nationally, which is their typical annual growth. So we would expect a student entering at this level to make, let's just say 22 points growth over the year on the diagnostic from the fall to the spring. So last year we looked at the percentage of students at each grade level that achieved that 1 year goal. If 1 year's goal was set at 22 points, we wanted them to make 22 points or more. So we were taking last spring's percentage at each grade level in each school, and the grade level teams then set goals around that to beat that score. So that's what we're focused on. And then grade level teams in each building in coordination with their instructional coach looked at high yield instructional strategies to help teaching teams identify strategies that would increase that percentage. Many of our buildings chose student engagement strategies. And so that's what the principal will be looking at. That's what the instructional coach will be focusing on with each teacher in order to ensure that more students make that 1 year's growth in 1 year's time. That's what we're working on. So in the spring or summer data review, it should be able to have those goals for you and how each school did, each grade level at each school.
Do you talk about individual or third grade teachers or whatever? Do you also work with individual teachers who do not show the growth? Specifically, do you work with individual teachers that are not showing the growth?
Principals do, and instructional coaches do, yes. This year is our first year of our instructional coaches doing full coaching, instructional coaching. They're not working with small groups of students unless they are in the classroom working with a teacher. So they're doing 6-week coaching cycles with teachers on goals that the teacher selects, co-teaching in the classroom and just having those conversations about the instruction in order to improve their practice. So that's a combination between the principal and the instructional coach. And absolutely, this spring when we when the principals sat down and looked at their data, they looked at each teacher's percentage of students that met growth, that 1-year growth goal last year, and identified, reasons why and what we could do to improve that score.
How do you work that as in regards to your union? If you have a teacher who's not very successful and you're working with them as a coach, they're a coach, they're not a principal, they're a coach.
Right.
How do you handle that situation and keep
There's
positive?
We're very careful. There's no communication about progress in a coaching cycle between the principal and the coach. So it's a risk-free environment when the classroom teacher enrolls in a coaching cycle with an instructional coach. Many teachers do let the principal know that they're working on a coaching cycle, but it's not something that's shared with the principal unless the teacher shares what they're working on, just to maintain that trust.
Yeah, just to clarify that instructional coaching is non-evaluative, but then the principal's job is to be in the classroom, make those evaluations of the progress, and then, work as needed to provide assistance as needed. So Stacy's been working closely, again, with the elementary principals. I work closely with the secondary and, addressing any concerns as they arise.
Stacy, some percentages in there are quite concerning when they're below 10%. What are we doing to ensure that we don't see those numbers as often? There's some zeros, there's some fives. Those stand out and they're glaring.
Right. So you're looking at the iReady, that's what you're referring to?
Yeah, and it's in several schools that I see some low numbers.
Yeah, this is the percentage that we're at benchmark in the green. So we're working with growth. Because although, of course, when a student enters in the fall and they are below standard, we want to see them make more than 1 year's growth in 1 year's time. So it's a little different than the score you're looking at here. This is where they entered, the percentage of that class that entered on level.
Does that talk to where they finished the previous year?
Actually, it's related to this year's grade level and this year's grade level standards. So we do see oftentimes that as they come in the door in the fall, the scores are low, but then we, see progress over the school year. But I guess to really answer your question, it's our overall general approach to ensuring that there's effective instruction happening every day in the classroom. Students are engaged. There's small group instruction by teachers and stations happening so that students are doing meaningful activity at the other stations, and the use of the Chromebooks. So we're in classrooms today. We saw Imagine Learning being used for English language arts, and that's, again, individualized, taking the kids where they're at and then helping them to make their next step of growth. With math, we'll get to the Smarter Balance scores here in a second. We were very excited to see that at 5th grade, having students at the elementary level and having them in self-contained classrooms, with one teacher and not rotating through a secondary schedule, that we had some great results with 5th grade last spring. And so we're looking to continue that. And so, strong focus is at the middle level and working towards that standards-based approach where students are working on the standards, working at their own pace, and knowing exactly what they have to do to meet the standard, and then using the technology tools that we have to individualize instruction.
What I see, like Mark's talking about, you look at 4th grade at
Right.
Tandem, teacher B, 5% of their kids hit it, and teacher C, 25% hit it.
Right. And
These kids have been in school for 3 years. And why do you see that much of a discrepancy? And my second question is, do the parents get to decide which teacher they get?
No, not in general. They make recommendations, but it's the principal's decision on placement. But yes, we've looked at the data. Another grade level that's concerning is 3rd grade at White Hollow. Basically, without looking at the PAL, because we disaggregate data, I mean, only 3% of the students are at standard right now for math. So that's a big concern at third grade. And, we've talked to the principals. They're aware of the certain grade levels where there's a need for additional focus. And I mean, that's our job, is to take kids where they're at and have them, make progress. I mean, we are working as hard as we can to get kids to standard. By having this iReady diagnostic, we're able to see if they're making growth. Because the bottom line is we want every kid to be making growth. If they come in at standard, we still want them to have growth. We don't want them just to, tread water for a year. We want every student making growth. All right, the next data set then is the Smarter Balanced. And so, as I said, you can take a look at fifth grade. We were really pleased. In fact, in English language arts, aside from the high school scores, our fifth grade was the highest for Smarter Balanced. It was 60% of students meeting standard. And the next page shows the Washington State scores. So Washington State was at 52%, and our fifth grade was at 60%. So that's very exciting. In math, you can see fifth grade for the state was at 38%, and fifth grade for West Valley was 53%. So those are just really encouraging. That's a big difference between the state, 38% to 53% in math at fifth grade. Of course, the area of concern there was the sixth grade scores. That was one of the few areas of all grade levels and content areas where we scored lower than the state. I did take a look at this year's seventh graders and saw that compared to the state on iReady, we have a lot of seventh graders in the yellow zone. So that means they're approaching the standard. So that, I'm very hopeful that our teachers can help to have students, make the progress that they need to meet standard as a seventh grader. And of course, we are aware of the data and we're targeting interventions. So we have an intervention teacher during the school day to assist students with math. And then we have intervention after school. And so there's been questions about the use of the emergency relief funds. And the purpose of that is to assist students that have been negatively impacted by COVID. So we are using ESSER funds to target after-school instruction at the mid-level campus. And the administration is working with families to have a commitment that the student will stay after school. We have the tutoring, we have the transportation. So that's going to be I'm very happy that the administration there has moved forward looking at the issue with math and making a plan to make a difference.
Peter, going back when I was looking at
Sure.
this data, seventh grade in iReady, they had a dip against the norm, but here they knocked it out of the park in the SBA. Is there a reason why?
So we're looking at, remember this year's seventh grade would be last year's sixth grade. So
So the data on iReady that I'm looking at, the sixth grade data here matches with the seventh grade data in the SBA.
right. So the iReady grade level, that's this year's grade level, and then the SBA is last year's grade level.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. So just again, takeaways would be that we're real pleased to see the success of fifth grade at the elementary, and then we'll focus on math at the mid-level campus. And we do have plans. We have plans in place to address the math at the mid-level. The disaggregated data, it's discouraging to see that we still have these achievement gaps if we disaggregate data, but they're there, and we're working on addressing this and making sure that every student, has a sense of belonging. Every teacher has high expectations for every kid, and but we still have gaps in the system. So you can see that we have gaps in achievement between white and Hispanic, in reading and math. Yeah, Mark?
Peter, I just have a question if I could. So, and I was looking at that, but we see this pretty regularly in terms of the difference. And I'm just wondering, I think we have an idea what causes it, but have we quantified or been able to do anything more direct in terms of figuring out what's causing that and why? I sense this is a trend that's not just affecting us, and it's probably in other places, but I'm just wondering, are we doing anything more to really make it different than what's happening in other educational institutions?
Well, it starts from the beginning. You see that we have the gaps in kindergarten readiness. So that's a big part of our outreach, is to ensure that every student is able to enter kindergarten knowing the kindergarten standards so that they can be ready to succeed. And that's why I like sharing that spring data, because we often have seen 100%. And that's when you have 100% of kids at standard, then you don't have those gaps. So having kids come in as much as we can kinder ready, and then taking them and getting to 100% at spring of kinder, that's a good place to be. We need to continue that through our system. And teachers agree. I've talked to teachers, and they, when they say, well, are we serious about 100%? And say yes, because what if every kid came in 100% in the fall? Could you have them 100% in the spring? And they say, well, yeah, we could do that. So the more that we can get to that in our system, that's where we want to be. When it comes to equity and inclusion, we continue to have ongoing professional development, and universal design for learning is really trying to meet students where they're at and provide choice so that students are engaged. And then we get into classrooms to monitor that and see if it's happening. So that's actually today we had administrators, elementary and secondary, in classrooms and debriefing what we saw. So that's part of our system.
Yeah, and I guess my first inclination is to think, like probably many people do, is that there's probably an issue with the language in terms of being able to, they learn what they hear in the household at an early age. But is that really would you think that that's the larger cause of this? Or is it just, like you said, those other, starting early enough is obviously important, but I'm just wondering, if there's more that could be done here.
Well, it goes back to effective instruction and having high expectations for all kids. And so that's what we were working on across our whole system. That's part of having the professional learning communities, is this idea of collective impact as teachers, so that every teacher's not out there on their own, they're working together as a team. And then having targeted interventions so that we are able to provide the assistance for kids that are not at grade level, but working to provide that targeted assistance and give the kids what they need. I mean, I think that's what I've heard. It's the win time, what I need. And so that's using, science-based practices for literacy instruction. So we do use phonics, phonemic awareness. We have intentional instruction and doing that direct instruction in small groups, so students are able to know exactly what they're supposed to do, and the teachers are able to monitor the small group instruction. So we have a lot of effective practices happening in our district, but we continue to need to work on this and address it, and especially as kids move through the system, we want every child to know that their teacher cares about them, and believes in them, and knows that they can succeed. So, I guess part of this work that we're doing is school climate as well. So it's providing a climate at school that kids are going to feel a sense of belonging at school, so that they have that social emotional foundation. So they're not worried about. I was just doing part of the professional development today, where it said that that if a kid is worried about threats, then they're not able to use that cognitive demand on academics. They're using their cognitive time to worry about if someone's going to say something to them, or they're not able to focus on the academic side. So having that caring, safe environment is a key foundation to having students have academic success, and that's what we're working on.
Okay, just my last comment on that. I know we're doing the best we can. It's just a general comment that, when I look at the ELA and the math, looking across the board, that's a big gap, 20% difference between Hispanic and white in both of those. And math is pretty critical, I think. So I'm just wondering if there's anything more. I know we've got some standard practices. Is there something?
Well, you'll see also that it's discouraging, because COVID really, in some ways, kind of blew up some of the good work that we were doing. You'll see some of the disaggregated, our migrant education. We were getting to the point where we almost had closed the gaps in migrant education between students in migrant education, the kids that are not in the program. And then when COVID came, we were back to having large gaps again. And anecdotally, I was out delivering the hotspots to kids, and I know that there was a household that I went to, and the middle school kids were watching the younger kids, and the parents were having to work, and we know that agriculture was an essential industry for our nation. So our agricultural workers they were still working during COVID. And so, we just had a big setback when it came to COVID. So, we're coming out of that now, and we're just have that urgency that we want to, do as much as we can and have these effective practices happening to make sure that we don't have gaps in our system. David, you have a question?
I think a critical part of this, Mark, it just takes time. We can't push a river. And I think part of it is, and we're working on this, I think we need role models, and we need Hispanic parapros. We need Hispanic teachers, to get really blunt. And we're working on that, and through the YBC program, we're able to get some people trained to be parapros, and hopefully they will become teachers. But we need more Hispanic individuals teaching the kids, so those kids can actually see that they can make it. I think we're done with, I'm not sure, but I think we're done with the battle that we did 30 years ago about kids walking in here not speaking English. I think most of our kids have some control of English language now, a lot better than it did 30 years ago. But we need role models. We need to have teachers here, and we're working towards that. But it's a frustrating situation. But I think we're and again, Peter's trying to say that we're doing the best we can.
Yeah.
Right now.
Yeah, and Dave just reminded me, so this partnership we have with Yakima Valley College, that cohort of student teachers, so they have a bachelor degree program at YBC, that cohort of teachers that spend a full year in our classrooms, that is a majority minority cohort, and it's majority bilingual. And I carry this quote around on my phone because this is research out of Stanford, and it says 92% of students who attended a high school with 75% or higher minority student population and then became a teacher live within 20 miles from where they went to high school. So that's 92% of students who then became a teacher live within 20 miles. So in our Yakima Valley, we have a lot of high schools with high minority population, and YVC is going to be attractive if they're interested in being a teacher and stay within that 20 miles where they went to high school. And so that's why we have this strong partnership with YVC. We have 9 of those candidates in our classrooms this year.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
My question really, and Dave, you kind of touched on it a little bit. I was just wondering in the back of my mind, are we actually culturally reaching out to these students in a manner that, they absorb the information better, and maybe, more Hispanic teachers and staff, in some of those areas might be crucial to them actually absorbing the material better. So thanks for that input.
Well, and many of our kids go back to their home schools to give back to the community.
Right.
And the demographics of West Valley have changed quickly. And those kids are not yet into the workforce. So I anticipate and we have a great number of teachers in this district that are West Valley grads, that I think as time goes on, that we'll see more of that population coming into our
That
district.
want to come back and make a difference. The next disaggregation shows another area that we have a lot of work to do. That's to be disaggregate students with disabilities and versus not students that do not have disabilities. So we have large achievement gaps in terms of meeting the standard on the Smarter Balance. So that's both in English and in math. And the research does show that having students included in the regular ed classroom and having access to the core content, that does make a positive difference. And that's what we're working on for inclusion in our district. We have some data to share on that. And we're making progress in that area, but we still have a long ways to go when it comes to students meeting standard. Next one is looking at low income versus non-low income. Again, there are achievement gaps between groups of students there in both English and math. And then this was what Mr. Strong had alluded to, English language learners. And we do have gaps, large gaps in achievement of our English language learners versus non-ELL, reading and math. Next is migrant education. As I talked about that 2018-19 school year, we were close to closing the gap in reading and very close in math. And then COVID really kind of blew things up, and we're back to having large gaps again with our migrant education program and students that don't qualify for that. And then finally, on the disaggregation of data, we have homeless students versus non-homeless. Again, homeless is definitely a barrier for our kids for learning, and we're doing as much as we can to try to address these barriers and provide assistance for kids that are experiencing homelessness. We've gotten, Jill Hendricks and her work with the Ram Landing have gotten some great recognition. But again, we have a long ways to go when it comes to actual achievement for kids. The Smarter Balance Assessment by school, just share again, these are teachers that are in the classroom currently this year. So there's some not NA, not applicable. That's teachers that moved into the grade this year. And you can see even some of our grades at some schools have all new teachers at that grade level. So again, we want to monitor the progress of our schools and teachers. And so this in some ways is a baseline data to look at from spring of 22, and we'll look at spring of 23 when the scores are completed. Next, we have the highly capable student disaggregated. This is actually the same data that was shared in the summer when we did the data summit looking at spring data. But again, we just want to keep that in there because we want to make sure in the future we update this as we get the new data. Next is the high school Accuplacer. So this is something new. We last year had every student take the Accuplacer, and so this is being reported. So 10th grade is when they took it last year as a 9th grader. So it's this year's 10th graders and their scores, this year 11th graders, and this year's 12th graders. Now, Central was using the Accuplacer for reading and math, and now they've announced that they're not using the Accuplacer anymore for reading. They basically are going to allow students to place themselves in class and then monitor that. Math will still be used as a gateway to go into pre-calculus, and so for this coming year, we'll continue to do the Accuplacer in math, but it's really, we wanted this to be authentic data, authentic assessment. So if Central's not using it for reading, there's not a reason for us to take the time and expense to have our students do that assessment if there's no reason for doing it. But the math will continue. You can see actually last year's, so this is this year's 10th graders. So quite a large number, almost close over 40% of last year's 9th graders met the standard for pre-calculus entrance. So this is really encouraging to see for the math instruction in West Valley. If you look at this year's 11th graders, then it's up over 50% that were able to place into pre-calculus. And then 12th graders, again, over 50%. So this is real encouraging. What we're going to do, once you meet standard to place into pre-calculus, there's not a reason to retake the test. So for this year, we'll test every 9th grader because they're new. And then any 10th, 11th, or 12th grader who didn't meet the standard last year, they'll take the test again in January. But it's really exciting to see that, for this year's 11th and 12th graders, we won't even have to have 50% of those kids test again because they've already met the college entrance standard. And again, this kind of really fits into our whole Ram to Wildcat, providing lots of opportunities in college and the high school and showing kids, hey, you just met standard on this college entrance, so go ahead, you can take the college level math and don't let it scare you because you did well in this entrance exam and you're qualified and you're ready to take this college level math. Next, we'll look at summer school. So this also is new data. So this is apples to apples comparison. So we have students who did not meet standard in the iReady test. These are the current grade level. So it's current grade 8, current grade 2, etc. These are kids that didn't meet standard. So both the kids that went to summer school and the kids that did not go to summer school, those are the same apples to apples that we're comparing. And so for grade 1, there was improvement in scores from spring to fall. So we're looking at spring of the previous year and then fall this year. So both groups had improvements in reading. Both groups had improvement in math, although even greater improvement looks like for the kids that went to summer school. In grade 2, there's actually looks like a slight, better improvement of kids that didn't go to summer school. There was a gap for grade 2, the current grade 2. So This data here is not what you want to see for summer school participation, but you can see on the other grades, it's very encouraging. Grade 3, there was a slight dip on both groups. And in math, there was no dip for the summer school kids, and there was a summer slide for the non-summer school kids at the current grade 3 kids. Grade 4, it's even more pronounced, where we had a nice increase in reading for the summer school kids. We had an increase for non-summer. But in math, we had an increase in the summer school kids and a decrease in the kids that did not attend summer school. So that's a real strong support there for continuing with our summer school program. Grade 5, about the same scores for summer school, non-summer school, and reading. And then in math, a slight increase for summer school kids and a summer slide for the non-summer. So again, some good data here on why we want to continue summer school. And then grade 6, slight dip in reading for summer school kids, a slight increase for non-summer school. But in math, a nice increase in the math scores there for current 6th graders. And they held steady for non-summer school. So kind of the takeaway there is that the summer school really had a positive impact on math. And so that's real encouraging. It's great to see that our summer school made a difference, especially when it came to math instruction. Any questions about summer school?
I was just looking at who goes to summer school.
Mhm.
And these results aren't outstanding. I mean, there's not a giant telling us that we need to keep going to summer school because the improvements aren't that great.
Yeah.
But then you look at who's going to summer school. And I'd venture to say that a lot of kids who are on the edge go to summer school. And a lot of kids who are doing well don't.
Right.
And so you're not going to see the giant improvement because you're working with a different group of kids during the summer.
Right. Right, and it's really encouraging that we didn't see a slide on a lot of those. So we hear a lot about the summer slide, so we did not see a lot of that. So that was really good. All right, next we'll look at special education data. So again, our focus is to increase the percentage of students that are served in the general ed population from about 80 to 100% of their school day. And so there's a rank order we did school districts in ESD 105. West Valley, you can see that we've moved from November of 2019, 58% of students served in general ed for 80 to 100% of the school day, and that moved from 58 to 62, and now last November was at 68. So 58 to 62 to 68. So some nice increases there. We want to take a look at how we're doing versus other districts here in the Valley, and you can see other districts have made increases as well. So we are part of the Inclusive Practices Project. So we included that there as well. You can see which districts are part of the Inclusive Practices Project. There's not really a direct correlation on districts that necessarily are at the top of the list, but perhaps if they're towards the bottom of the list, they are needing additional assistance with this. And just for our audience, West Valley is kind of middle of the pack right now. So it ranges from 92% from Toppenish down to 40% for Mapton. And West Valley, we're at 68% of our students served in general ed for 80% or more of the school day. The next, just wanted to share with you, we've shared this in the past. In the past, there have been some areas that needed assistance, but very excited that on this district determination level, West Valley meets all requirements from the state. There was something at the bottom of the page where, yes, there were some compliance issues, and those were specific IEPs that had some information that when they did the audit, there was specific things that needed to be addressed in an IEP, but that was just specific things that have already been addressed. In general, the overall program, we meet requirements in all areas, so we're very pleased with that. All right, and next we just share the student demographic data. You can see that we've had an increase in Hispanic students over the years. Our student attendance data, this has been shared before. The OSPI has not updated this data yet. So we still have data from the 2020-21 school year. We'd like to get the 21-22 because 2021 obviously was during the pandemic, so kind of an anomaly there. attendance for all grades. Again, we had quite a dip during the pandemic, so we'd like to see our more updated data, but still keeping this in here for our board packet so that we can update it as soon as we get the new data. Student discipline data, this has been shared before, but just encouraging to see that when you disaggregate data, we don't have a difference when it comes to Hispanic or white students. The discipline rates are similar. We do have a difference when it comes to male and female, but the discipline rate for males has been declining over the years. So that's an encouraging thing to see the decline. And then we get to high school graduation rate. So this was shared with you. Again, they don't have the 21-22 data yet, but we did have a slight decrease from 87% to 84% at the high school. And we do have an achievement gap of Hispanic and white at the high school. And then we have the disaggregated data for all the different areas there. And the next is dual credit. I think I shared with this previously. For the 2021 school year, 85% of our 12th graders had completed a dual credit class. This year, we're excited to share that every senior is taking college in the high school speech. So we anticipate that a few years from now, when we finally get this data back from OSPI, we'll have 100% of our seniors with the dual credit, which is high school and college credit at the same time. Next is military service. So this was requested by Mr. Jager. So we had 6 students from the class of 2022 enroll in military service after graduation, and we'll continue to collect this data each year. And then the post-high school data, I'm surprised this hasn't been updated by the state because usually it's updated in September. I did call and talk with the person. They said they just have been continuing to clean up glitches in the data and they don't want to publish anything that's incorrect. So they're still working on this, but I anticipate for our next data summit, we'll have updated information. But this shows that we have an increase in students from West Valley attending four-year colleges and a decrease in kids not going to college. So that's what we want to see. And then it shows percentage of graduates getting bachelor's degree after 8 years past graduation. So that's been an increase, but there's quite a lag on this data. And then the pre-college course taking, this is if you have to take remedial classes. So it'll be interesting as I shared with you already, like, Central is not using Accuplacer. They're having students do self-placement. So we'll just have to see what happens with this. Our financial algebra class, which we have 6 sections that we're having at the high school. So that's all of Jamie Zeller plus Ryan Frula is teaching a section. And that counts as college level math. And so you don't have to take remedial math if you have taken that class. So we'll see what happens with English. Math are still the college placement currently, but we are doing a good job of having kids have the option of that financial algebra 2, which is college level math. And then finally, this is what Mr. Strong had alluded to. We continue to keep this in our data analysis, and this is our student demographics compared to our teacher demographics. And so when it comes to gender, we're close to 50-50 for male, female of students. It's actually 51-49, interesting. But our teaching staff is 74% female. And then our students are 35% Hispanic. Our teaching staff is 3% Hispanic. So our teaching staff is predominantly white and female. And our student demographics are more diverse when it comes to ethnicity. And so, as we shared, we're working closely with the Acma Valley College program to have student teachers that are from our community and working hard to ensure that our staff reflects the diversity of our students. All right, well, that's the data packet. I haven't looked at the time. I'm not sure where we're at.
Well, we're
Oh my
really
goodness,
close.
we're right on time. That's perfect.
All right. So thank you, Dr. Finch. I'm going to say we should just take a quick 3-minute break here and come back. It is 6:59. Let's just say 7:05 just to be safe here, and we'll go ahead and start. If it's okay with everyone, I would just like to
All right,
say
sounds
the
good.
items arising for the regular agenda, and we'll cover it there.
All right.
All right. We'll see everyone at 7:05. Okay, thank you. We'll go ahead and start the regular meeting, call it back to order. It's 7:06, again, on the 13th of December. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance again. Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, any changes to the agenda? Anyone? Dr. Finch?
No changes that I have.
All right, communications, response to public comments?
All right, we had no response to public comment needed for this meeting.
All right, staff recognition.
All right, we'd like to honor Debbie Olsofka and Linda Quarterman. They here this evening? Yay, that's what I thought. Come on up. So Linda Quarterman is 11 years of service, Debbie Olsofka, 6 years of service. So
Congratulations.
all right, it's always great to recognize our staff in their retirement and appreciate their service. So thank you for coming this evening. right.
Okay, we don't have the other person. Linda isn't here? Okay, we'll go ahead to item number 6, election of officers, reorganization of the board. So we will start with president. So do we have a nomination for president? I will nominate Mr. Thorner since he's in line. So I think it's a formal process to go through it, however, but nonetheless, so anyone? Questions, comments for? All right, do we ready to vote? Okay, all those in favor of Mr. Thorner becoming the next president of the board for West Valley signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Congratulations, Mr. Thorner.
Mhm.
And I'll be more than happy to turn it over to you at this immediate point since you are now the president.
Before I go on to vice president, I'd just like to take a minute to thank Mr. Strong. I was reflecting on the last 2 years of his service as president of this school board, and during those 2 years, he's really had to lead us through and endure a lot of various events that we have had to face over these last 2 years. And I think I can speak for the other members when I say sincerely, we appreciate your leadership, your steady hand, and your positivity throughout the entire process. And I'd just like to give Mr. Strong a sincere round of applause for his last 2 years.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay. So next is vice president. I'll entertain a nomination for vice president of the school board.
Yeah, at this point, I'd like to nominate Dave Jager.
Okay. Any other nominees? Okay, I'll close the nominations for Mr. Jager. Mr. Jager to serve as vice president. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Mr. Jager is our next vice president. And he'll get to lead the school board meeting next Tuesday, since I'm going to be gone. So congratulations. Legislative representative, I'm trying to remember who, was it Dave or Mike? It was Dave, okay. So I'll entertain nominees for legislative representative. Mr. Meyer?
I did that once, way back when, for a long time. But it's a lot of travel over to Olympia and back. Yeah,
Okay.
the ability to do that.
that a yes or no?
I think he's passing.
How about Mogul? How about Mark Mogul?
That'd be,
This is the first go around that I've had on election or reorganization of the board. I'm very interested in the WIA rep.
so, Mr. Strong?
Sure.
Okay. Either that or we could have just lopped both onto Mr. Jager. No, I'm just kidding. That's fine. I'll nominate Mr. Strong for legislative rep. Thank you. And I'll take a vote on legislative rep. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? And thank you, Mr. Strong. And I'll nominate Mr. Mokel for WIA School Board Representative. Anybody else? Okay, I'll entertain a vote for Mr. Mokel as School Board Representative. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Mark Mokel will be our WIAA School Board Representative. Thank you very much.
All right, at this time, we have our presentation by our host school. So it's so nice to be here at Summit View. I'm so grateful to Amy Forrest and the rest of our team to be able to stream our board meetings and go on the road and be able to do it here from our new school at Summit View Elementary. We're going to have the board join the audience so we can see the overhead. And we're going to have Principal Eva Lest and her team from Summit View provide a presentation to the board.
Test, test.
Okay. Okay, so when we were talking about school board presentation, I just said, hey, Jen and Cassie, do you guys want to talk about where we are with inclusionary practices? And they're like, okay. So Jen's going to speak to this, but we had been doing some of this a while back, but didn't know it was called inclusionary practices. So it's kind of cool that now we have a fancy label. I also want to say that typically we have a lot of Summit View staff at a school board meeting, but we had our staff Christmas party, social, whatever you may call it, and I encourage them to just stay at the kiln. So with that, I have Jen Sanderson, my go-to intervention specialist coach, LAP extraordinaire, and Cassie, who's in charge of our DLC. And they're going to talk to you guys about where we are with inclusionary practices.
Probably not. I'm gonna hold it. All right. Hi. As Eva introduced me, my name is Cassie Orovets. I'm the DLC teacher here at Summit View Elementary. I just wanted to start with an opening statement. So if you guys could direct it to the screen, I'll read it to you as well. Providing relentless, intensive instruction may improve students' academic skills, but students who are segregated from the typical classroom are not provided with rich peer models or peer supports. How can we support our students in relationship, social skill, and community building while also targeting academics? All right, and here's Jen to talk about our journey.
So let's see. It's been several years. 2017 was the first time we started moving class or intervention type services into classrooms. We went with our second grade teachers. They all wanted to have their interventions served in their classrooms. So we took all of our para support and myself and moved in that way. The following year, we had, I just put it out to the entire staff and I said, who wants to do this? And almost every single one of them said, yep, we see what's going on with second grade. We want to do the same thing. Third grade went and took all of their data and took all of their resources and decided to plan their own intervention time as well with me involved and just really took the bull by the horns for that. And so that was great. After moving up to the freshman campus, we continued to push into classrooms. We also took on a common schedule where all of the teachers had common plan times with their grade levels. And we moved resource and lap times to be common, so kids were not pulled out or moved around nearly as much as we used to. We all saw what happened the second year at the freshman campus with COVID and all that lovely stuff. We cohorted our students for safety and all that. But when we moved back in here, we went back to what we were doing. We moved back into our classrooms. We continued to work with the resource department and having our resource services at the same time as our lab services. And then we also had our DLC join in with us because we'd never had a DLC before. And so now we wanted to figure out how to put these kids in with the rest of our groups, because having them in that one room downstairs wasn't successful the first several months. So, and Cassie's going to talk to that part.
All right, can I steal your notes? All right, so when DLC students moved into Summit View, the first half of the year I was out on maternity leave. So it was all new and it was crazy. And I came back in January and these kids had made great progress and I was like, okay, let's just run with it. And so we started figuring out where students who are considered DLC or self-contained could move into the typical classroom and join their peers, getting access to the curriculum as well as peer models. And so what that looked like is students joining lab groups like Jen was saying, or sometimes lower reading groups. We also have students that are not in DLC or self-contained who are performing at higher levels than the typical classroom level. And so we tried to figure how we could move students around to apply their knowledge to their best fitting level and their working knowledge. So 22-23, that's this year, 9 out of 15 of my DLC students are placed within their general education and they are assigned to their gen ed teachers lists, like their class lists. So this means that it's automatically assumed that the student will participate in their specialists as well as their recess and lunches with these teachers. Anything fun, movie days, I always tell the teachers, please take the kids. I'd rather they be with you than me. So they do some really fun stuff outside of my classroom. And then I also approached the Summit View staff and I asked for teachers who are willing to take students who had higher needs under their wings and have them join their classes. So we purely started this by looking for teachers who had the most buy-in. We're trying to create this really great lens over inclusion and we want to show that it's working. We don't want these kids to be unsuccessful and we don't want the teachers to be unsuccessful as well. So making sure that not only are we supporting the kids, but we're supporting the teachers within the classrooms. So Jen and I and Eva, and we have a few other people in the school who are on our inclusionary team, have begun work on next year's plan. We are trying to be able to take the common plan time that is already existing and ensure that our special services team, which includes the resource teachers as well as myself and any interventionist specialist, will be able to come to those common plan times and work with the teachers who may have some extra questions and may need more support in their classroom with students who have higher needs, whether it be students performing at higher levels or lower levels than the typical developing student. We have been introducing student inclusion phases in our school so that teachers know what it looks like for a student to be at tier 1 of an inclusion versus tier 4 of inclusion to ensure that all students and teachers are successful. And we are hoping that we can get some training for teachers in accommodating differing grade levels within their class. So providing some helpful instruction on how to differentiate the curriculum that is already existing within their classrooms to make it applicable for more students. So I wanted to go over what is an inclusion. So in the past, we have heard about mainstreaming, and mainstreaming and inclusion are different. And so I just wanted to kind of go over that. So inclusion is not about adding to a teacher's list of things that they have to do. It is instead restructuring what they're already doing, because we know that our teachers here at Summit View and West Valley are amazing, and we don't want to change what they're doing. We just want to restructure it. We don't want to make it harder on them. So we want to fit the needs of all of the students and not just those on IEPs. So accessing information in a different way is a really great way to include all students. whole class could be learning about different Indian tribes, and some students could be accessing that information in very short structured sentences and pictures associated with those sentences for them to learn. Other students could be accessing the general curriculum, and other students could be reading a chapter book based off of that time. It does not mean that all students are going to be doing the same thing. So it means all students that are going to be learning, and they're all going to have goals and objectives that they have to demonstrate their learning of. So they have to be able to show that they have learned these things, but we're ensuring that they're doing it in their own way. So things that are necessary to support our teachers in inclusion is materials, as well as consultation with an inclusionary specialist or an instructional coach. Thankfully, we have an instructional coach here at our building. I believe everybody does, but Jen has worked really well with a lot of our teachers to ensure that they're getting the support that they need. Common plan time, which is something that Summit View has been working on for the past few years, and to make time for collaboration, advanced training, peer support, and buy-in. You can't really make that. You have to earn that, and we've been really working hard to earn that. We need to make some special priority in ensuring that the curriculum that we are teaching and the strategies that we are using and how we're teaching that curriculum is applicable for all students, so that we can make everything accessible and accomplishable for students of differing levels. So I wanted to share some reviews. Like I said, I have 9 out of my 15 students on my caseload out in the general education population. So I went to their teachers and I asked for them to write me a real life review based off of what they've seen in their classroom. So I'll go ahead and read you them. The first says, "It is amazing to see students enter my classroom that haven't been in a general education setting. To see them laugh with their peers, play games, and problem solve is heartwarming." Another says, "Including DLC students in a general education classroom gives them exposure to grade level skills. Sometimes the skills are picked up right away, and other times it's a struggle. It's absolutely worth the challenge." I have a first grade student who was in the DLC room full time last year and has transitioned to full inclusion this year. Socially, he's grown leaps and bounds since the beginning of the year. He was extremely withdrawn in September and has really blossomed. My student now shares during our read aloud and participates with other students when we turn and talk with partners. It's also uplifting to see him making the occasional joke with other teachers and students. The other kids have learned to help my students during writing instruction to sound out words. They now assist him without even being asked. I've seen how our inclusion model has helped traditional students in our class to build the relationships with students who have unique challenges. One thing that I really highlight with our staff here at Summit View is that inclusion is not about bringing students to a common standard of learning or of accomplishment. Instead, it is about exposure and social relationships and growing our community. And overall, that has been the greatest improvement that we've seen with our students here at Summit View, is the amount of peer relationships and community building that has happened with the kids with differing learning. I want to close out with the same statement I opened with, hoping to kind of get your brains connecting the dots. Providing relentless, intensive instruction may improve students' academic skills, but students who are segregated from the typical classroom are not provided with rich peer models or peer supports. How can we support our students in relationship, social skill, and community building while also targeting academic? Thank you guys for your time. Yes. So thankfully, we have, sorry. Give them time. Yeah. Thankfully, we haven't had anybody who's been outrightly negative or not wanting to support inclusion. We've definitely had people who are more tentative. I mean, at any point in time when you add something onto a teacher's normal day, we're doing so many things. It's very scary and it's very hard. But you have to allow them the space to grow, and you have to allow them to become and be reflective practitioners to ensure that they are their best selves. Because if you're pushing a teacher or a student to do something they're unwilling to do, they're not going to do it in their best way. So making sure that Jen, myself, and Eva have been available to instruct, help, assist, whatever we need to do, has been eye-opening for a lot of people. And I will say that a lot of people who maybe had some reservations have come around, and they're seeing the successes just based off of these past few months of inclusion.
Yeah.
jump in right away. But having seen success in those that did start the program, in developing other teachers to take on more of the caseload. Does that make sense?
Yes. One of that was really big.
That was a long
I was going to say
The question was, what sort of professional learning have we provided our staff to be able to accommodate these differing learners within our classroom? Am I correct? Okay.
So first, one of the things I was going to add to her, to what she was telling you, is that last year we started with what is beginning as like a 3-year plan, and so this year it was willingness, and in the following years, we're building on the willingness, but there will come a time when this is just an expectation of the building. That makes sense. As far as professional development, we don't have like a specific set of classes or courses people are going to. We have done the UDL training here at the school in the fall. Some teachers have taken that on really well and have just dug into it. And so working with their grade level teams is something that they're going to be doing, as well as working with me as their instructional coach, and Eva and anyone else that is that's just really ready to take on that challenge. It's going to be a community of learners for the next several years. So, and
Also, myself and Jen had the opportunity to go visit McMicken and Ruby Bridges Elementary over on the west side. And we were able to have, this was not that long ago, less than a month ago probably, we were able to have a clearer view of what the special education department is working towards. And so that was nice to come back, and I was able to give the same presentation to our staff in our staff meeting. It was a lot more in depth than what we gave you guys. Eva has also supported us in learning a lot more about restorative justice within our building. That is a huge move in our building, and that allows the teachers to see the value in social emotional development and not just academic development and growth. And so really putting that emphasis on ensuring that students, the top 3, safe, loved, and learning, those are the top 3. So making sure that those top 2 check marks are taken care of is a big focus of that. And so ensuring that we are doing those things correctly and implementing restorative justice within our classrooms is a big deal as well.
With that, we've used Angela Brooks for a lot of training for restorative justice, getting the whole staff trained and putting a huge focus on community building and the relationship piece. And so I think that has helped give us some strength. We appreciate the UDL training and things coming from the district. And I think we're all just going to kind of go through this journey together, because we're really seeing the benefit with some of our kids who, like, I'm going to give this example because this is a safe environment for this. A student who was in Cassie's room last year who really, really struggled. He is in a first grade classroom, and there's another student who struggled last year a lot, but just a gen ed kid. And he has taken this kid under his wing and is making sure that everything's good. And the student who was struggling from DLC is doing great socially, and he's learning to read in first grade. And it's just so cool to see this positive relationship of 2 kids who struggled that are just doing so great this year. And that's because, yes, they do have an amazing teacher who is working so closely with them, but we've put them in an environment that is the least restrictive environment for them, and they're seeing success. So, yeah.
The 6 kids that are not, they're still self-contained.
Yes.
Is that because of the amount of care that they need during the day?
Multiple factors, but I'll let Cassie talk to that.
So at this point in our inclusionary journey, like I said, we're working with teachers who are willing. So the 6 students who are not out in general education throughout the day are still included within their gen ed classrooms through specialist recess and lunch, and we are working towards more. As Jen said, eventually this is just going to become an expectation where inclusionary practices are an expectation for our school, as well as it's going that way district-wide as well. But right now I'm really trying to work with the students in their functional skills, so functional behavioral skills. We're looking at things like making proper, eye contact with somebody when they're speaking, learning to raise their hand instead of just yelling, having appropriate behaviors in a classroom to ensure that not only are our DLC students receiving instruction in their least restrictive environment, but we want to ensure that other students are receiving instruction in their least restrictive environment also. So we're trying to include these students as much as they're ready for right now. I've already seen so much growth throughout these past few months of school, and we have grown the amount of inclusion that some of the students who started out full-time in my classroom are included in their gen ed classrooms right now. So does that answer your question? Awesome.
You just touched on it, I think, but have you found that the gen ed students, I think, when they hit 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th grade, they all need 90 people. It's one of those things where the gen ed students are more than willing to take the inclusionary kids under their wing and try to help them. I mean, it's great to see, and I've seen a lot of it in my experience.
Yeah.
I do think, you have to remain realistic that there are some kids where they're going to be more successful in Cassie's room with the services and the attention that they can provide in there. And that doesn't mean that we're failing at inclusion. That just means we recognize that all kids have different needs.
What does the additional adult support in the general ed classroom look like with your inclusionary model? As those students are going into a traditional classroom, is there a parapro or a teacher that's going in with them in a team teaching model, or is there additional help?
So the question for those of you on stream asking is, what does the additional adult support within general education classrooms look like? So as of right now, that actually feeds into partly why I have 6 students that are in my room full time. The paras that are in my room, a lot of them are general paras not performing as one-on-ones, but I do have a few one-on-ones as well. And some of those paras are out with students in the general education classroom. Otherwise, there's just not enough bodies to support the needs of all students in all classrooms. Not to say that it's just students who are considered DLC who might need the support of another adult within a classroom. We have a lot of students who are in the mainstream, typically developing line, who also could utilize the support of another adult within the classroom. So thankfully, Summit View staff and parapros and counselors are amazing, and they fill in where needed. So if we've got a kiddo who is normally 80% gen ed, but he's having a really off day, he gets the choice, like, okay, would you like to go to Mrs. Olden's class today, or do you need a break and you need to stay with me? And if he chooses to go to Mrs. Olden's, the opportunity and the choice is always there for him to take an adult if he feels the need for extra support that day. So thankfully, we have a very flexible staff, and we're able to accommodate those needs as necessary, but we're pulling from other places when we do that.
Starting for I shouldn't say starting. We are also looking at probably in February, readjusting our scheduling for the 23-24 school year. So our para support would be more strategically used for supporting all of these students as well as our LAP students, because a lot of them are funded under LAP dollars. So we would still be providing those services, but using the services very strategically to make sure that we're supporting all of our kids the best we can.
Well, thank you. Now I think we know the real reason that everybody was dressed up so festive. It didn't have to do with the school board. It didn't have to do with the school board meeting, but. Well, I was really impressed with the festive wardrobe for the school board meeting. So it kind of woke up the. Exactly.
You guys do not have to go home and change. You're fine.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, on to item 8, which is public comment on non-discussion items. Did we have anybody signed up? Okay. I'll open up the public comment period to anybody that wishes to speak on non-discussion items.
Peter, just, I'm not sure if this is a spot to do it or not, but when is our next open meeting on talking about the 19 million?
We haven't scheduled that yet.
Oh, we haven't?
No.
Okay, it's in January sometime.
Well, to have that, we need to have a solid list of what we would propose. And so we're still working on getting the, actual proposal numbers on what that would cost.
All right, thank you.
Okay, I'll go ahead and close the public comment period. Moving on to action items. We have action item 9A, approval of minutes from the study session and the school board meeting on November 21, and both the study session and the school board meeting. We could take those together, and I'll entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
I'll move that we approve the minutes from November 21st, both study and board.
Thank you, Mr. Meyer. I'll take a vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Same sign. The motion carries 5-0. Next up, we have 4 travel requests. Does anybody have any questions about those travel requests?
The boys and girls wrestling are going to, it's confusing where they're going. It says the boys are going to Foss High School in Tacoma, and then the girls in the paperwork says they're also going to Tacoma, but there's an addendum, attached addendum that says that they're going to Othello. So both overnight trips. I don't know if they're both going to Foss, if one's going to Foss, one's going to Othello.
Yeah, I would just suggest that we approve them, and then I'll get clarification on which part of that is the typo.
I'll move we approve the travel request.
Thank you, Mr. Mokel. Take a vote. All those in favor. So are you, I'm sorry, just for clarification, are you making a motion to approve all 4 travel requests?
All 4, yes.
Thank you. I'll take a vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries on travel requests B 1 through 4, 5-0. Next up, we have approval of resolutions. Resolution 22-12-751, appointment of investment officer, auditing officer, and signatory of warrant registers. Dr. Finch, anything to add on this?
Just this is annual approval, and so the resolution is included in your board packet.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion on 22-12-751.
I move to approve resolution 22-12-751.
Thank you, Mr. Jager. Take a vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries on 22-12-751, 5-0. Item 10, items arising.
Yeah, I just have some. I just wanted to reiterate a little bit of what Mr. Jager said about the final and last community forum. I would like to see it, as soon as we can, a final date on that so that we can kind of bring some closure to that issue. I know you guys have been working on it for a while, but as soon as we can get that underway, we can start focusing on some other things. So.
Okay.
Just a question about that. Would it, for scheduling purposes, would it serve us well for administration to first bring the school board the list that they're working on in a study session first, and then from the study session after that we could have the public meeting on that list so that the school board could at least have a chance to talk and deliberate further on that list?
Yeah, I would support that. I just want to see the process keep moving. We talked about this before, and just get it out there for everyone to start pondering right away.
Right,
But that makes sense, what you're saying. I agree
Sure.
with that.
So as we start to put together some agendas for some upcoming meetings, we'll include a study session, hopefully sometime in January and then from there we'll figure out how we're going to handle the additional public meeting, or I guess additional public forums.
I would agree. That sounds like a good timeline.
Great.
We'll make that happen.
I'm comfortable with that. So
Good.
that's good.
All right. I do have an item rising, Dr. Finch. I had to check with my colleague, Mr. Meyer, to make sure that I wasn't missing something. In the data summit, Ms. Drake mentioned the use of our instructional coaches, and it would appear that how we're utilizing instructional coaches has maybe differed than how we've done it in years past, which is fabulous. I kind of liked what I heard. I was just wondering if it would be possible to, again, this could be a study session and it's not an immediate thing, or a program during the school board meeting about just our instructional coach program district-wide, both at the elementary schools and the middle schools, about kind of our journey of where we were and maybe where we are now and how that's kind of evolved. Because what you said sounded a little bit different than what we have done in the past, and I was starting to doubt that I missed something that maybe I didn't. So I would, if that would please the rest of the board to hear some more information on that, I'd love to hear some more about that. So we'll work on getting that on an upcoming. Again, it's not an emergency.
No, it sounds good. We can certainly make that happen.
Great. Anything else on items rising? Okay. Superintendent's report.
Well, just want to make sure everyone knows that everyone in the community, parents, students, staff, board members, you're all invited to our Winter Wonderland we're having. That's the day school gets out for winter break. So that's on this coming Friday. It'll be at the high school commons from 4 to 7. And we were in our learning walks today talking about learning targets. Our learning target for the Winter Wonderland is to have fun. Okay. It's to bring the community together. Just have a fun celebration of the beginning of our winter break. There's actually our boys and girls basketball are hosting Sunnyside as well. And Amy Forrest has done a wonderful job of having our PTSAs. We're going to have different stations, and there'll be board games for kids, and I think some face painting I heard, hot cocoa. So we said, and I told Sunnyside they're welcome to have some hot cocoa too. So everyone's invited. And we want to have a nice celebration. This comes from the work that we did last school year and presented to the board last spring, that we wanted to have the district host inclusive activities and events that were included. And so we had a nice kickoff to the school year, and we received lots of positive feedback about that. Again, Amy Forrest was the one that organized the back to school event. And so we're going to do this Winter Wonderland coming up, and then maybe we'll look for the spring. But right now, everything's focused on the Winter Wonderland. So this Friday, after school gets out, 4 to 7 at the high school commons, all are invited.
Terrific. Thank you, Dr. Finch. Item 12, board reports and board development.
I just would like to say, we've had a rough month. We lost 3 high school kids and 3 totally different situations. But the article in the paper, and we talked to Ben and Lacey, anybody else involved, they did an amazing job in that article in the paper, and how everything was handled at the hospital. And it just made me very proud to be part of West Valley.
Thank you, Mr. Jager. Anybody else with board reports and board development? I just have one item, another thing to be very proud of about West Valley on a different note. Some mornings after I drop my son off at the high school, I stop at the 72nd and Tides and Starbucks. And on a recent morning, I ran into a teacher, and who this teacher was really is irrelevant to the point that I would like to make. But this person was not feeling well that day. And they had made a mistake in their order, and they're fixing it at Starbucks. And they ended up getting like 3 drinks, and she laughed, and we had a little joke about how well hydrated she'd be. But she said that going to school that day, even though she didn't feel well, she was like, I'm not contagious. I tested negative, but I can't miss school. I have to be there. I don't want to not be there for the kids. And we have a sub shortage, and I didn't want to miss school. And I was really, this is just this one person, but I think that goes to a general collective sense of the professionals that we have on our teaching staff here in the district, that they want to make sure that they're not getting their kids sick, but they want to take care of the kids and make sure that they do not lose one day of having their teacher in school. And I just wanted to highlight this one situation, but and I'm not necessarily sure she knew who I was. We just visited, and that's totally fine. I was wearing a hat and everything, so I was pretty incognito, but
Striped shirt and tennis shoes.
exactly right. But that interaction made me smile, and I'm just really grateful once again for our teaching staff. And I truly believe that's representative of our of the attitude of our teaching staff in our district. So I just wanted to share that story. Anything else? All right, then. Well, it's 7:47, and we'll go ahead and adjourn the meeting. Thank you.
Sign this one.